Welcome back to the Men Seeking Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Michael Lynch. Excited today to introduce a new expert to speak to our community, Dr. Sam Shay. And Dr. Shay is a functional medicine expert, and we're going to get into talking about things men should know about as they're going through post-divorce or a phase of their life where they really want to be paying closer attention to their health. So Dr. Shay, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. So my story actually begins with divorce. Though I was a child, 6-year-old boy, when my parents had their divorce, and what I call a nuclear divorce, where me and my sisters were caught in the blast radius, and they did everything wrong, and weaponizing one child against the other, bad mouthing the other, being very focused on exacting revenge on each other as opposed to minimizing the damage and the emotional shrapnel to their children. And so I'm deeply committed to helping individuals who are either in the middle of or trying to prevent or in recovery from divorce. Because I'm biased, I know that a jaded parent makes a bad parent, and an unhealthy parent also does not make the best parent. And that also was a major influence because not only were my parents didn't handle the divorce right at all, despite them both being, and this is true, psychiatrists, they definitely did not handle the emotional milieu, shall we say, correctly. And this is also why I'm also a stand-up comic, as you can probably guess. Plenty of fodder, so much fodder. Oh my God, a buffet of options to write a comedy about growing up. The the other thing that was real, aside from their mishandling of the divorce, is that neither of them took care of their bodies correctly. And as a result, they were hangry, tired, easily irritated, and in physical pain, which then also affects their mood, the decision making. And my mother was in constant back pain and was taking painkillers. And some painkillers, like Tylenol, actually decrease empathy. That's actually the mechanism behind Tylenol. One of them is that it will blunt the emotional contributions to pain. That's why it's partially why it's effective against pain, but it can make you kill your empathy. And when one as a parent does not have a proper blueprint for your diet, your exercise, recovery, nutrition, and lifestyle, and taking care of themselves, especially sleep, from your ability to live a fulfilling life is deeply impaired, but also your capacity to be a present parent and also a companion to whoever your future or current romantic interest might be is deeply impaired. And so instead of me raising a clenched fist to the sky at how unfair and unjust and unnecessary the stress was for me growing up from these two professionals who misfired completely in all directions, I want to be, like as Gandhi said, just be the solution you want to see in the world. So I, so when I look back at what didn't work for them, how it could have been better, one of the easiest fixes, the easiest fix that could have happened is not to work on their psychology, but to help them with their physiology. That would just set the stage for literally everything being better. Even if they're still angry and agitated and vengeful, the rest of it, the dial would have been turned down. You add sleep deprivation, you add pain, you add dysglycemia, you add all these other things. Every emotional dial is swung up. Every one
Dr.
of them.
Shay, the definition, and I know you're alluding to there, physiology means what
Oh, sure.
exactly?
Yeah. Okay. I love, this is gonna be a great episode for you Scrabble enthusiasts. So many points. So many. So there's psychology, which is how there's contrasting the two. Psychology is like how our mind is influencing our experience. And then physiology is how the whole rest of how the body is functioning. So that means blood sugar control, your levels of sleep or sleep deprivation, your digestion, levels of pain or amounts of pain you're navigating, tension, your stress hormones, your sex hormones. It's just the soup of all the different chemicals that affect mood and blood sugar and everything else. It, yeah, that's how I would define it.
And how directly interrelated psychology and physiology is. From the little I know, the way the brain is processing things is directly impacting the body. Fair to say.
Yeah, so psychology is how your thoughts influence the body. Physiology is how your body is influencing your thoughts. It's a
Oh,
two-way street.
okay.
It's
Okay.
a two-way street. The body influences the mind influences the body. It's not some, here's another Scrabble word. It's not some Cartesian dichotomy where it's the mind versus body and we're just a robot and the mind is operating up here. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, and it created this real kind of neck down separation of the body as just a complex and mostly annoying machine that we just have to deal with. But the more accurate is that the body is actually an extension of your mind in the sense that how you can literally change how you think by changing your posture. And this is there's so many they're interconnected, and that's good news and bad news. The bad news is that if one is going down, it'll take the other with it. But if one is going up, it'll take the other with it too. So that's what I meant by one of the fastest ways that I could help parents or people who are divorced is not by endlessly sitting on the couch and talking to them about their feelings, but actually looking at what is their optimal, are they optimizing their diet? Are they optimizing their exercise and their recovery? Are they optimizing their nutrients? Are they optimizing their sleep? Are they optimizing their digestion? Are they optimizing there's all these other things that will deeply impact and influence your quality of life and the quality of your relationships.
What is a common situation for when a person finds you and seeks out your help? Or is it a variety of situations?
If we're talking about men specifically, usually men seek out answers in the realm of functional medicine, functional genetics, lifestyle change, holistic medicine. Usually they seek it out when there's some sort of urgency that they don't want to go to the Western medical toolkit of drugs and surgery and radiation. It's tropey and half joking aside, there's some truisms. They don't want to show up typically. Now, there's obviously not going to talk about the usual exceptions here, but for men, it's okay. It's something urgent, like my hair's falling out and I don't want it to stop. Clearly, if you're watching the video, don't come to me for that because I'm going for the reformed supervillain look with the Lex Luthor chin strap thing. I think I'm pulling it off quite nicely
I'd like
if
to,
I don't say so
and I would
myself.
like to interview you when you get to that stage of your life, by the way.
The reformed supervillain, I'm already there. I'm living it now.
Okay.
So it's like my hair's falling out. I can't keep it up. Duct tape isn't keeping my shoulder on anymore. Or other realities of like I'm about to get married and I want to look better for my wedding day, or I want to like restart and like launch, or I'm about to have a kid and I suddenly realize I need to be a better example for my kid, or I just got divorced and I want to reclaim my body so I can now go back out into the dating pool, or I've just found someone new and I definitely want to restart my life, or I've gotten divorced and I've got a kid and I want to be that good example for my kid. And for whatever reason the divorce happened, I want to be a good better, even better role model. Other things that can happen is I just got a diagnosis like, oh, my heart is XYZ, and I'm really concerned about these medications. And I want to see if there's another way or an additional parallel way to support this. But then there's like the non-emergency reasons I see men come to see me. Is like most of them have to do with their like forward-thinking biohackers, longevity enthusiasts, health seekers, or entrepreneurs. And the entrepreneurs have a different mindset, like they have to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have a different mindset where they're very much forward thinking and wargaming out into the future years in advance. And they're also thinking more on the cutting edge of what's the latest thing, because to be an entrepreneur, you usually have to be thinking one step ahead of what is the need that needs to be fulfilled in the in society. And naturally that'll extend themselves to, okay, what do I need to have as high functioning brain decision making performance as possible, because I need all of that to marshal mobilizing this business. And occasionally there's people that are just like curious, like they just stumble across some holistic thing, like, oh, that looks interesting, and they're just of the mindset where they're curious, but that's very rare. Yeah.
Hold your thought for 1 second. So it's 2026, and I got a kick out of the way you positioned the option. I call it corporate medicine, where it's a pill, a surgery, or whatever. Are you fun? Do people tend to go there first and look for you after, or is there enough awareness of the type of work that you do to where they will be like, I'm going to choose Dr. Sam first?
I'm so there's two, I feel like there's two questions in there. One is, do people know enough to that they will just, oh yeah, functional medicine is for me? And then there's specifically, is Dr. Shay and
Okay.
his stuff the right person underneath that umbrella? So those are, I think those are two separate things. So in terms of the answer, the first one's going to be more appropriate to answer first. So what's happening is that there is a shift in the consciousness towards holistic medicine. And just to be clear, like, what is holistic medicine? It's not dancing around, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and waving crystals. That's not holistic medicine. That's a caricature. Holistic medicine is very easily defined. It's you analyze someone's lifestyle, their sleep, their digestion, their exercise, their diet, their toxic exposure, their morning routines, their evening routines, their history of exposure to any mold or other hidden infections, their stress levels, unresolved trauma. You have a template for lifestyle. My template's called the 10 pillars of health. I just rattled off 8, 9 of those pillars. So basically having a framework for lifestyle where you analyze from the outside in. That's lifestyle. Analyze from the outside in. Labs is looking at you from the inside out. So when you combine the two, labs and lifestyle, that is holistic medicine. That's it. That's all it is. Lifestyle and labs, combine the two, that's holistic medicine. So there's right now an increasing awareness that there is more to medicine than going in for your annual, having your blood pressure checked and checking for a couple lipid markers to see if lipid markers and blood sugar and whatever, and maybe a stool test to see if you picked up a parasite while traveling. That is not holistic medicine. That is a very surface level analysis to check for overt pathology, meaning, is there a disease process in place? Functional medicine is looking at the giant gray space between you're fine and you've got an overt disease. So we're looking at this entire gray space and helping people. The way to understand holistic medicine is we help you go from chronic to normal to optimal. Now, some people psychologically are, let me put it this way, most people are seek out holistic medicine trying to get from chronic to normal. The biohacker enthusiasts and entrepreneurs, assuming they don't have a chronic issue, they're the ones who typically want to go from normal to optimal. Athletes, I would put in this as well. Those are rarer, and there are specific practitioners that really cater to that group of, quote, high performers. But most people seek out when they're having a problem, and that's chronic, getting them from chronic to normal. And so functional medicine, holistic medicine is a different philosophical framework. It's a different toolkit to analyze someone to help them go from chronic to normal to optimal. Now, why? And there's many different holistic medicine organizations that are out there. And the awareness is increasing for a couple reasons. One, everyone in the 40 to 60 age bracket is watching their parents die on the vine, and not prettily. It's pretty gnarly. My father right now is dying of dementia.
No.
Despite all my efforts to try to help him, he was the worst patient ever. He would dual wield his double doctorates with samurai swords to keep away any suggestions that would deeply inconvenience him from his comfort foods and his lifestyle. So this is, and I caught it way early, way early. We're talking 10 years ago. And there's things that absolutely could have been done. That went to seminars, did all sorts of things, and he just wouldn't have a bar of it. And then you've got other people who are watching their parents just withering with more and more medications of stronger and weirder stuff, and they're just hollowing out and just living a miserable life and draining all the resources, and just it's awful. And some of them even have personality changes from all the different medications or the disease process that are going on. And it's wow, and you're 40 to 60, you're like, wow, I don't want to do that. I do that. I'm looking at my father and I'm like, what did he do that contributed to this? How about everything? How about I don't do that? What he did. I'll give you one example. It's like my father abhorred exercise, called it odious. And so now when I look up, and we all inherit some belief systems from our parents. And before I realized just how much my father is decaying and how much of it was his own fault, before I would look at a flight of stairs and be like, and then I realized, that's my father's thoughts, not mine. So now when I look at going up a flight of stairs, I'm like, cool, I get to do some extra exercise today. I've just completely flipped it because I'm just living in antithesis to what he did wrong, which I'm not a religious person, but I will. There's the fifth commandment of honor thy mother and thy father. Okay. What does that mean? It doesn't mean love. That's not the word. The word love is in another place in those 10 things, and it's not there. It's not love, it's not agree, and it's not obey, because those are three separate words. And none of those three words were used. It's none of those. What does honor mean? My opinion, it means learn from those that came before you. It means be grateful for the good and model the good and take all the bad as a cautionary tale and act accordingly, and don't repeat. I'm mixing religions here. Don't repeat the karma going forward. I don't think there's a Hebrew word for karma, but you get what I'm saying. To me, it's like, how do I honor my mother and my father? By emulating and appreciating the good and not repeating their same mistakes. End of story. That's what it means.
I want to point out one thing. I want to point out one thing you just said that ties into the work. I do a lot of work with people on the concept of limiting beliefs. Now, you just teed up an amazing example of, I had a father who didn't believe in exercise. Eventually, for you, that turned into, hey, there's a set of stairs there. I'm going to walk up those stairs. Talk about
happily.
Happily. Yeah. But talk about going from a place of, let's say you chose to embody and dedicate your life to all of his beliefs. That would have had one outcome. There's an example where you set your own positive one and you based it off of what you learned. I think there's a lot to what you just said there.
Yeah, thank you. And for the men, we'll get to the more details of functional medicine in a minute, but I feel like this is a really core piece here. I'm just going to linger it. I want to offer an exercise that I did. There's an author named David Data who wrote a chapter in his book. The chapter was called Live as Though Your Father is Dead. And I never understood that until I was in my 40s, where what he meant was like, when you stop being that little boy wanting daddy's approval and wanting daddy to make it better and to daddy to fix the scary thing, and you're truly on your own, and you are to make something of yourself in the world and be your own man, as opposed to live in the shadow in the shadow of your own father. That's the real pivot point into becoming a real man, when you're no longer haunted by the specter of the expectations or the failures of your own father. And what I did in 2019 is I actually pre-wrote my father's eulogy. This is an exercise I want to offer to the men listening here. What I did is I opened with what we said, the fifth commandment says that it doesn't say love, doesn't say agree, doesn't say obey. It means be grateful for what was good and emulate the good, and then take the rest as a cautionary tale. So what I did is then I listed the 14 things I was genuinely grateful for and wanted to model. Everything was 100% genuine. Then I listed the 52 lessons that were cautionary tales. This is important that I did not list the event or the circumstance which dictated the lesson. I just stated the lesson.
Listen.
And I'll give two of the best examples of that. Number one, this is the lesson. I learned from you that one could be a hero worldwide, but a hypocrite at home. I learned that morality without action is mere philosophy. He was a coward, and he didn't protect me for years when he should have and could have. So after writing the eulogy, but in that very specific frame of what were the lessons as opposed to what were the circumstances, to me was so freeing and provided so much more perspective, because now it's on me to not repeat the same mistakes going forward. And now, even if he's had a very marred legacy in terms of how he what was, or rather was not, my father, I now have a set of lessons and guidelines to how to be the better man, quite literally. And that's the only way forward, as far as I can tell, is how can I just be the better man? And no one's dictating this to me. This is coming from my own conclusions and introspection. Therefore, if that's not a strong influence on how to change behavior, or at least give a template of how to do it, or a checklist, I don't know what is.
When you went through that exercise 7 years ago, was it meant to be something you wrote out for, at that time, for yourself only, as opposed to sharing it?
Oh no, I shared it. I shared it. I shared it with him. I shared it with my mother. I shared it with my stepmother. I shared it with my siblings.
How was that
And
responded to?
my siblings got it. My mother and stepmother got it. He just was not willing to engage. And it was an attempt to try to reconcile our relationship. And this may sound odd, but it was an attempt to be like, okay, this relationship is not going anywhere. If you don't want to be dead to me, I'm already written your eulogy, and I'm really trying to hold even all of your failures, which are real according to him and according to everyone else in the family. I'm trying to extract the good out of this, and can we have some honest conversations and build a relationship going forward that's based on reality and honesty, not avoidance. And he just took the avoidance route. And I don't know what, there's more details and stuff that happened afterwards. It's not relevant to share, but it's like, I really did. And in the process, whether he was going to say yes or no, I still found a great deal of clarity around it. And so I wasn't, even if he had said, even in the anticipation he was going to say no, the exercise was still incredibly valuable to me. And I was going to be a better man for it, no matter what. It wasn't dependent on him.
Think about it. I'm going to go back to the word avoidance. So you just shared that as an exercise somebody can do to write that eulogy beforehand. People hearing that, there's going to be a percentage of those people that are going to want to avoid the thought of doing that. Was it a case with you, Dr. Shay, where there was enough pain, or was it strictly desire for clarity? What was it that ultimately drove you to do something that I don't know if the average person would do?
It was realizing, it was truly coming to grips with the fact that my image of my father was a complete lie. That I realized that that the relationship was a hoax. That and he later admitted this over Thanksgiving in front of my mother and my stepmother, at dinner with my mother and stepmother there. My mother had known him for 50 years. My stepmother had been married to him for 30 years. And and the dementia had kicked in a little, so he didn't have the filters on. And he basically admitted that he found the whole project of being my father expensive, annoying, time consuming, and above all, boring. And you have to understand, my father he's a famous psychiatrist, but he's also deeply traumatized, but he's never done his own work, but he's written books on trauma to the point where he's actually world famous. And that hence the one can be a hero worldwide, but a hypocrite at home. That's real. That's not hyperbole. And he he I realized that he had kept me at arm's length the whole time. And my excuse I was given is, oh, dad's working, he's helping the world and all the rest of it. And I had just written it off that, oh, dad would really love to spend time with me, but he's too busy with all these things. Reality was, he had no interest in spending time with me at all. He found the whole, again, expensive, annoying, time consuming, and boring. And he's deeply on the spectrum. And I'm not saying that people on the spectrum are bad parents. I'm saying he had deep on the spectrum plus trauma plus avoidance and willful avoidance. Any of those, it doesn't matter if you're on the spectrum or not, but he had this kind of unique set of caricatures that he was just only in his zone and only interested in his three things. And that's it. And I was not one of those three things. And I realized that I was also on the spectrum as well, not as far as he was. And that's why I made the show Neurospicy, or my 1 hour comedy show, to explain what it's like to live on the autistic spectrum. And also, I was in this very unique situation where my father is farther down the spectrum from me than I am from normies. So I'm on the spectrum, but he's the bookend. And so I found myself in this very bizarre no man's land where I couldn't connect. I didn't understand and connect with people who were more neurotypical, but I also know what it was like to not be able to connect with someone on the spectrum because my father was so far down it. So I understand both sides of this. And I made a comedy show that it's for those of you who want to watch it, and I hope you do, it's called Neurospicy Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum. Literally go into YouTube, just put in Dr. Sam Shay Neurospicy, you'll find it. There's a 12-minute highlight reel, and then there's the full 60-minute show. It's clean observational comedy. There's no politics, there's no cursing, there's no gratuitous body fluid jokes. It's something that the family can watch together. And it was the 60 minutes I wish I had 40 years ago to explain to my family, friends, colleagues, doctors, teachers, whatever, how to navigate, what it's like to navigate on the spectrum. And I talk about my father quite a bit on there. And I wrote it because I realized that he was a reluctant father. What is a father? He's present, he protects, he provides, and
Loves.
I had 5 P's here, and I'm
Oh,
running into my alliteration. Protects, provides, is present, participates,
participants.
and at best, he was a reluctant provider, at best. And when I rattled off those 4 P's to him in front of his geriatric psychologist, and I said, I said to his face, at best, you're a reluctant psychologist and a reluctant provider. And he said, yes. And my stepmother was right there. He was agreeing with me. And the thing is, it's nice to finally be validated and vindicated as opposed to be gaslit. And my sense is that when people are looking to bring this back to your original question, when men in their 40s and 60s are looking at their parents now and they see the ossified psychology and the withering body and the chemical dunking of ever more increasing stronger and stronger medications, that's as much of a wake-up call as seeing something fail epically in your own body. And that's when people start to seek out a solution and a different solution because they're seeing the solutions that are advertised on every channel, pharmacy and whatnot. The solutions that are being offered are the solutions that their parents have taken. It's, wait a minute, I see what that looks like 30 years from now. I don't want to do that. So there's got to be something else. Then they start looking at other things. Unfortunately, there's podcasts like this that introduce men to different pathways way more efficiently and quickly than what it was 20 years ago.
Was your childhood ultimately the thing that created the line to functional medicine?
It was 100% that. So it's a fact where it's a trope. There's a constellation called Chiron that the Greeks put up there thousands of years ago. It's literally called the wounded healer. It is such a common trope. It's in the frickin' stars, where a person is born with a wound of some meaningful formative sort, and then in the process of their journey to heal from that wound, they learn the tools, the skills, the frameworks, the compassion, the empathy, and the wisdom to be able to help other people get out of that wound as quickly as possible. And As for me, I had a buffet of wounds to deal with. Growing at 6 years old, when my parents divorced, that was the start of the crippling insomnia I had for over a decade, to the point where it stunted my growth. Severe embarrassing digestive problems. I was pale, I was sickly, I was thin, I was short. I was the shortest kid in school. I had anxiety, depression, sugar addiction, video game addiction. I was chronic pain because of the violence at school that no one protected me from, not my parents, not the school. So I just thought pain was normal just because I
Mm.
had it all the time. And I also contracted Lyme disease when I was at summer camp when I was a kid. And so it was just exhausted, sickly, depressed, anxious, in pain, and this kind of social leper. And I was supposed to be the third generation medical doctor. My father's father was arguably the most famous gastroenterologist in the United States when he was alive. And I was founding director of the Fels Cancer Research Center in 1937 until his untimely death, ironically, by medical malpractice in 1963
Yes.
under the knife. I was supposed to be a third generation medical doctor, but then in high school, I read a book about natural medicine and found a mentor who was more holistically minded. And I didn't realize there was this whole other field called holistic medicine. I just took a sharp pivot into natural medicine. And my whole college career just pivoted towards that. I did pre-med plus the holistic health practitioner degree, and then went on to chiropractic school where I was number one in my school, and then did functional neurology for 8, 9 years, became an acupuncturist, trained under an osteopath, got certified with the Institute for Functional Medicine, studied with Dr. Kalish and his Institute for Functional Medicine for 4 years, and then found Fit Genes back in 2016. And I took hold of that with both hands and been doing genetics for in my 11th year now. And I'm now the international educator for Fit Genes, and I have my own Fit Genes podcasts, and I design and run genetics testing and scale that out to other certified health coaches and licensed practitioners. So the entire trajectory of my quite varied, there's health nuts. I'm a health mutt. I'm a combo of so many things that came directly from the divorce at age 6, directly. Draw a straight line right back to it. And it was so bad. I literally was having a coffee habit at age 6 to stay awake in kindergarten. Don't ask me about barnyard animals until my third cup. I'm sitting there in circle time with a mug.
Wow.
And it was very sickly. So I deeply understand chronic illness a lot. Chronic illness, chronic fatigue, chronic pain. And it's just like I said, a buffet. I wasn't kidding. And it's and I'm so clear. I am so clear that a massive amount, the majority of all of my issues could have been solved or not even started if my parents, the adults in the room, had actually taken responsibility for their health and have not been sleep deprived, in pain, hangry, or otherwise physiologically dysregulated, which then meaningfully impacted their psychology and how they treated their children and how they made decisions on behalf of their children.
Talk to the divorced man, or in
Uh-huh.
general listening to this or watching this. Based on what you just said there, what should the man with children be thinking, looking at? Because what you just said there was dynamic in terms of if something can be seen and dealt with at a particular stage, what should a male parent, what are the types of things they need to be keeping an eye out for that you offer help in that area?
The number one, the most high value, cost effective, longest lasting, effective thing any divorced dad could possibly do without even a close second is to get their genetics tested for health, their health genetics. I'm not talking about checking for disease genes. I'm talking about what are the genes that identify your optimal diet, your optimal exercise, your optimal nutrients, and optimal lifestyle. I'm not talking about checking for genes for cancer or diabetes or heart disease or dementia or stroke, whatever. I'm not talking about those. That's medical genetics. I'm talking about functional genetics, which is that gray space. What for your genes for your diet? And by the way, why I say it's the most high value without any close second, because you run the test once and you're done. You have your gene results for life. You don't have to keep repeating them like a cardiac test or a stool test or
Interesting.
whatever. Those tests are great. I do them all the time. They're wonderful. But if you're talking about a place to start with genetics, not even a close second. So if you can identify for a couple $100, you can identify your optimal diet, meaning what's your carb tolerance? Are you better suited for keto, paleo, Mediterranean, or high carb? That is massive. You can do that genetically now. Number two, you identify your genetic trigger foods. We're still under the umbrella of diet. There's three things on diet. There's carb tolerance, then there's trigger foods. So are you genetically vulnerable to caffeine, to alcohol, to histamines, to salt, to lactose, to gluten, to allergens? So if you've got your genetic reality, and I like to say I'm a fan of reality, if you know that caffeine is not good for you because you can get caffeine-induced anxiety and depression. By the way, I have that in spades. I did a 45-minute podcast recording for my Fit Genes podcast just on the caffeine, genetics of caffeine. I have all of those genes in the bad versions of those genes. That's why, and remember, I was having coffee starting at age 6. A portion, not all, a portion of my anxiety and depression was physiological. It was the caffeine creating the chemical inducement of anxiety followed by a depressive drop. It wasn't just all the gaslighting and home and violence at school, though that for sure contributed.
It adds up.
It adds up. Exactly. That is precisely it. It adds up. So what can we do to not put the things in that add up? That's the physiological components I'm talking about. That's exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. The other thing around diet is eating and behavior. So some people genetically tend to overeat. It's called the satiety genes. It doesn't mean if you have the genes for this that, oh, I guess I'm genetically prone to overeat. Oh, past the Twinkies. That's not what that means. If you get genes like that, which I have, the answer is not, oh, past the Twinkies and roll over. What it means is I now have to change my environment and not rely on willpower. So I just make my environment. It's easier to control your environment than your willpower. I don't buy bread because half of it will make it from the cash register to the car and the other half will make it from the car to the fridge. I'm not relying on my willpower if I don't buy the bread. The end. That's how I control my environment. Other people are genetically at risk of over consuming sugar and over craving sugar. And there's more things you can change based on your environment to control that. The other things to look at in your genetics is your exercise. So are you a sprinter, an endurance, or a mixed fiber type, which has really big implications for how you exercise and train safely? Then there's, are you at risk of injury? So therefore, do you need to focus because of your collagen genes or your risk of inflammation? You got to focus as much on your recovery as you do your exercise. So a lot of people, when they run their genes on genetics, they realize they've been doing the wrong exercise and they haven't been recovering enough. Then there's the genes on health, well-being, longevity, and nutrients. So it's like, what's your relationship to inflammation? What's your relationship to liver detox? And then what are the top 5 most important nutrients you need in order to help your genes express in a way that's beneficial for you long term? So it's the best single step, and it's inarguable. I'll just be really frank with you fellas. A lot of times when I talk with men about functional testing, all the rest of it, and in male psychology is like we do a stool test or a stress test and we get the results back and they're not good. And what I hear is, oh, I had Taco Bell and my tummy was funny, so that test doesn't count. Or, oh, I was just stressed out that day, so that stress test doesn't work. And it just becomes this argument over what's the locus of reality. Whereas you show someone their genetics, there's no arguing. It's adorable when you try. It's cute. Oh, you're arguing. You're literally arguing with yourself. This is literally you, and you are arguing with yourself. I could use entertainment. Go on. This is fun. So so the genetics there's a level of acceptance that comes with the inarguability of it, and it is so freeing, in a sense, to see the reality on paper. And people should not be afraid of bad results on their genes. This is true, for the first 7 years out of now my 11th year of running genetics, I was the gold medalist in the crappy Gene Olympics. The gold medalist. Okay. Until I got dethroned. I'm now in bronze place, which I'm not bitter about at all. Not at all. So there are every gene that has been picked is something you can do about. You're not going to change the gene. You're going to change how it expresses. Your genes are not a switch, it's a dial. And some people have not great versions and really bad versions of genes. So you just imagine there's a dial with a green, yellow, red on it, like a traffic light. Some people's default setting is to the red or the yellow, but with the proper, consistent lifestyle, diet, nutrition changes, you then can move the dial expression towards the green-like area, but it has to be consistent to keep it there. Otherwise, it'll default back into the red and yellow. I'll give you one example. When I did my genetics test at 36, I had chronic debilitating joint pain across all my fingers.
Hmm.
Despite doing functional medicine and all these other tests, and then I ran my genetics, realized I was a hyperinflamer, and there was all these other recommendations I didn't know existed until I ran my genetics test. Within a couple months, all my joint pain is completely gone and kept gone. It's been over 10 years now.
Wow.
That's one example.
Wow.
So the genetics testing is the place to start. It's the highest value test. You do it once, the results are for life, and you get a very clear foundational template, a blueprint of what to do going forward for diet, lifestyle, nutrition. And it does not exclude those other functional tests like blood tests, stool tests, other tests. It doesn't exclude them.
No.
That's a different window into your body. Genetics is about what is your ideal template going forward, and then what are the fault lines you need to shore up before they show up. Whereas the functional test is a thumbprint of what's happening right now. A genetics test will not tell you what your thyroid level is now. It won't tell you what your lipid levels are now. It won't do that. It will, but everything that happens is though filtered through your genetics. They intertwine, but they're not the same tests. But ideally, you do both functional testing and genetics. But if you're going to start with one, start with the genetics.
Okay, let's go through so let's do the process then. A person watching or listening to this agrees and they say, I've got to do this. And they can do this, Dr. Shay, through you, correct? Okay.
They can go to, there's two ways to go about it. One is that they can go to the DNA Decoded, and that's the website where people can get their genetics tests and join the group program. Or they can go to, and they can put in the code Gold 100 and they get $100 off the Gold program, which includes the group program with me where I'm on Zoom once a month. The other option is they can go to fitgenesusa.com, FITGENES USA.com, fitgenesusa.com, and they click on find a practitioner. And then we can connect you to your the closest FitGenes practitioner near you. And for those that are international, this test is international. If you're in Australia or Southeast Asia, then it's just fitgenes.com to find a practitioner. If you're in New Zealand, it's nutriscript.co.nz. But otherwise, there's maybe 12, 24 countries that just genetics doesn't ship for one reason or another due to their shipping laws and whatnot. But yeah,
Okay,
that's how to do it.
Okay, so the person does the test, or yeah, it sounds to me, just based on the way you outline these things, the person needs to go through some type of debrief, coaching, counseling with you.
It's not specifically with me, but it
Okay.
can be. But the genetics, FitGenes does not offer this direct to public. It is only through certified health coaches or licensed practitioners. That is
Okay.
intentional. That is deeply intentional
Okay.
because it is a big mistake to think that someone from the lay public who has access to a chat bot and listen to a couple podcasts, they know what the full implications and how to implement what they're getting from their genetics results. That is a deep mistake. And so it is always through a practitioner for the ultimate benefit of the client, because you really want to get this genetics info correct the first time because it's for life. You don't want to casually do this in the sense that I'll just get my results and glance at it. It's your genes, man. It's you. So different practitioners have different structures. Some do group programs. Some have automated drip feed implementation. Some do one-on-one consulting. It just depends on the practitioner.
No, that makes perfect sense. So they will find the practitioner through FitGenes.
FitGenesUSA.com. Yeah.
FitGenesUSA.com is where to go. Wow. That is, and there's a lot to unpack from that, but it just sounds fascinating. What other areas, in addition to what we just talked about, did you want to share with this audience today? Was there anything else specifically, or was driving them to think about genetics testing the primary thing that you wanted to get across?
So the primary thing would be there's the idea of what I came in with, and there's what we talked about. And there's primary message ultimately is being a real man is taking personal responsibility for everything. And whatever your circumstances of the divorce or otherwise, your childhood or otherwise, nobody is coming. It's you, and be the change you want to see in the world. That's the essence of being a man. It's picking yourself up and just moving forward and doing so with grace and kindness, and then there are tools that can support you. There are tools that can support you on this. And I think the most powerful tool out there is the first one to start with is genetics testing. And if you have more resources and bandwidth, then do a combo of genetics and functional testing. If you want to do that, you can go to my personal website, drsamshay.com, and then click get a discovery call. And then I'd be happy to chat with you about what your needs are and what type of additional testing and whatnot, like doing that lifestyle plus labs together if you're wanting a more kind of concierge approach. So the testing is a the testing is a means to the primary focus, which is taking personal responsibility no matter what has happened to move forward.
One of the things that when we started going down this last area, I had started with the question of father with children. So just to complete that loop, so when the father does the genetic testing, I'm assuming, you tell me otherwise, that what he learns will be beneficial to him in monitoring and managing his kids' health.
It will not only be that, but more importantly than monitoring and managing is being the example.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing for a father to do is to model excellent behavior and ethics and perseverance and fortitude and resilience. It's the modeling that's actually going to come across.
Excellent. Excellent. So just to reiterate, to restate, for the genetics test, and I've got to I'm sorry, I got to go back through my notes here. And for a more comprehensive approach, they can go to your site, drsamshay.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if they,
I was
yeah,
just
and if
saying,
they
any
want
other resources you'd love to have them look
two,
at?
two others, one is that they can go to my look at my comedy show on what it's like to be on the spectrum, and that you just go on to YouTube and put in neurospicy Dr. Sam Shay, and you'll find it.
Excellent. Dr. Shay, this has been very helpful, a very unique perspective, and I think you've given a lot of ideas to curious people as to start trying to gain an understanding. I love what you said about taking the responsible approach, which is one of the things I talk about. Let's live honorable lives. Let's live educated lives. Let's try to help each other with what we have. So thank you very much for being a
Absolutely,
guest.
Michael. And thank you for having this podcast. And I really mean that having a space for men who may have a similar narrative in their background can come together and really learn and share resources. It was invaluable. It's certainly something my parents didn't have, and maybe if they had the resources that you were offering, their lives and therefore my life would have been very different. So again, we can't change what happened, but we can certainly help others going forward. And
In,
thank you for doing
in,
this.
in addition to your expertise, I want to thank you for being willing to be vulnerable. I'm finding this is one of the most common, we've all got our own life stories. Working with men on allowing themselves, look at your situation. You went right to the earliest stages of life to address pain, how it kind of compounded and what it led to. And it sounds like you've gone through, in some ways, hell. You've taken that life experience of which was not your fault, and you've turned it into something. This is the value of vulnerability and understanding thyself, is look at what it can be a catalyst for. So I want to thank you for that. I think that's an additional benefit of listening and watching this, in addition to what your expertise is.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Folks, please, when you watch this episode or listen to this episode, share it with the people in your life that would benefit from it. You will see on the Men Seeking Freedom website, this will be featured there with all the links that Dr. Shay referenced. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode.